David wasn't the kind of man you noticed right away. He wasn't flashy or loud. He didn't wear designer suits or drive luxury cars. But the moment he walked into Maria's life, everything changed. For her and for her 2 children, Maria had been struggling. Her late husband left behind debt, a broken-down house, and 2 kids, Jamie, 5, and Alana, 8, who needed more than she could give. Then came David. A quiet, hard-working man who worked double shifts as a mechanic and still found time to help Jamie with homework or braid Alana's hair. People whispered, "He's not their real dad." But David never flinched. He never reminded anyone that he wasn't obligated to be there. He just was. He bought groceries, paid the school fees, even fixed the leaking roof with his own hands. Every holiday, every birthday, he was there. Smiling, sacrificing, showing up. When Maria fell sick, stage 3 cancer, David didn't leave. He stood by her side through every chemo session, every sleepless night. He bathed her when she couldn't move, cooked for the kids, paid all the medical bills, and when Maria passed, David was shattered. But he didn't let the children fall apart. He kept the house running, tucked them into bed, and told them stories about their mother's strength. People called him a stepfather. But to Jamie and Alana, he was dad. Then came the will reading. Maria's siblings, her lawyer, even some long-lost relatives gathered. David sat in the back, hands folded, expecting nothing but hoping for recognition. What happened next would shake the very foundation of everything he had given. The room was silent, almost suffocating, as the lawyer opened the folder. Maria's voice, though absent, now echoed through the final decisions she had made. The children sat on either side of David, holding his hands tightly. They trusted him, they loved him. Maria's older brother, Leonard, adjusted his tie, already smirking like he knew what was inside the will. Her sister, Denise, wore fake tears but kept glancing at her watch. Some of these people hadn't spoken to Maria in years, yet here they were, ready to divide her life's worth. The lawyer began, "To my daughter, Alana, I leave the family jewelry, and a trust fund to be released when she turns 21. David smiled faintly. That was good. She was thinking of the kid's future. "To my son, Jamie, I leave my library and a separate trust fund, held by the family attorney until he graduates." More nods from around the room. "To my brother, Leonard, I leave the lake house." Leonard smirked wider. "To my sister, Denise, I leave my personal savings and any remaining family heirlooms." David's heart sank a bit. So far, not a single mention of him. But maybe Maria had saved it for last, a final note just for him. The lawyer turned the page. "And finally, to David Carter," everyone leaned in, "I leave my thanks." Silence fell. A chill passed through David's chest. "My gratitude for stepping in where no one else would. For loving my children. For being the man I could depend on. But legally, I leave him nothing." You could hear a pin drop. Alana looked up, confused. Jamie squeezed David's hand. The man who paid every bill, who stayed through sickness, who gave up his dreams, was left with nothing, and yet, he didn't flinch, not yet. The silence after the will was unbearable. David sat frozen, not from anger, but shock. His ears rang with the echo of that word, nothing. The kids looked up at him, their innocent faces not yet understanding the depth of what had just happened. He tried to smile at them, but it faltered. Then the whispers began. Leonard leaned over to Denise and muttered, "Told you she'd come to her senses before dying. Why give it all to the hired help?" Denise let out a fake chuckle. He was just the placeholder. A warm body. Now the real family can handle things. David heard every word. He looked around the room. Faces that once smiled at him during holidays, who accepted his money when they needed it, now avoided eye contact. Even the lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly, clearly unsure of how to navigate the tension. But David wasn't thinking about the money. He was thinking about Maria. Why would she do this? Was this her choice, or someone else's manipulation? The woman he loved wouldn't abandon him, not like this. Jamie tugged on his sleeve. Dad, what does that mean? Why didn't Mom leave you anything? Alana's eyes were glossy. You did everything for us. David placed a hand on both of them. It's okay, he said softly. What matters isn't written in paper. But inside, he was breaking. That he remembered nights he stayed up nursing Maria through chemo, how he worked overtime to pay for Alana's braces, how he sold his motorcycle to cover the mortgage once. All the sacrifices, erased in one sentence. The vultures in the room started circling, suggesting changes, property sales, splitting assets, but David didn't move. His dignity wouldn't let him. They had underestimated him. This wasn't over. That night, David sat alone on the porch of the house he helped build, a storm quietly brewing both in the sky and inside him. Rain threatened to fall, but his thoughts were louder than the thunderclouds. That he wasn't angry about the money. He was angry about the message. You didn't matter. He had never expected wealth. He had expected acknowledgement. As the kids slept, David walked through the house. His fingerprints were everywhere. He had installed the kitchen tiles by hand. The nursery paint? He chose the color. Every corner held pieces of his soul. And now it was all legally someone else's. That he stopped in Maria's study, hoping to feel closer to her. A box sat on the shelf labeled "Private." Out of respect, he had never opened it. But now, something told him the answers were inside. Inside were journals. Maria's handwriting flowed like music. David sat down and read, March 5th, I don't deserve David. The kids love him more than they ever did their real father. He's patient, strong, and kind. But my brother Leonard, he keeps warning me. He says David's after the house. After the inheritance. It hurts me to even write this. I know it's not true. Page after page revealed Maria's battle between love and pressure. Her brother Leonard had manipulated her, filling her with paranoia. David's every act of love had been doubted, dissected, poisoned. Then came the final journal entry. If you're reading this, David, and I didn't do right by you, please know I was scared. Not of you, but of being wrong again. But you were the only thing I got right. I'm so sorry. Tears fell from David's eyes, but they weren't just of sorrow, they were the beginning of clarity. She hadn't truly left him out, she had just been afraid, and now, he had proof. The next morning, David stood in the mirror, eyes puffy but full of purpose. Maria's journal changed everything. She had loved him, deeply. But her brother Leonard had poisoned her trust. That single influence had rewritten her final wishes. David now knew who the real manipulator was. He walked into the lawyer's office unannounced, the journal clutched tightly in his hand. Mr. Harding, the family attorney, raised his eyebrows. I need to see the will again, David said calmly. Mr. Harding nodded, pulling it from a file. Did Maria ever mention updating it? No. This was the last version she signed, 6 months before her death. David placed the journal on the desk. You need to read this. The lawyer skimmed the entries, his eyes widening. She never mentioned any of this to me, he muttered. This changes everything. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Leonard was already moving in, barking orders at the house staff like a tyrant. The kids looked uncomfortable, unsure why their uncle Leonard suddenly had control over the home their stepfather built. David returned later that afternoon, and Leonard greeted him with mock sympathy. I didn't expect to see you here, Leonard smirked. I'm not here to argue, David replied. But I know what you did. Leonard's smile faded. Excuse me? You poisoned your sister's mind. Manipulated her to rewrite a will that left out the man who raised her children. You've got no proof, Leonard snapped. David pulled out the journal. Oh, but I do. Leonard paled. David wasn't just a grieving stepfather anymore, he was a man with truth on his side. The kids watched from the stairs. For the first time, they saw David not just as their stepfather, but as their protector, and Leonard, as the fraud he was. The house felt different that night. Tension hung in the air like a thunderstorm about to break. David sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, waiting. Not for Leonard, but for the kids that he knew they had questions. And finally, they came. "Is it true?" asked Maya, the youngest, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did Mom really want to leave you out?" David shook his head slowly and placed the journal on the table. "No. She didn't. But someone made sure she doubted everything we built together." Jordan, the eldest, opened the journal and read silently. His face shifted from disbelief to heartbreak as he scanned the entries: Maria's raw thoughts, her fear, her confusion, her guilt. It was all there. She was sick, and Uncle Leonard twisted everything, he murmured. "Exactly," David said. "He saw an opportunity, and he took it. But not for love. For control." Meanwhile, Leonard was upstairs rummaging through drawers, growing paranoid. He had seen the journal, seen the cracks forming in his carefully painted story that he called the lawyer, trying to intercept. "You need to ignore that journal." Maria was emotional. "It's not legal evidence," he snapped over the phone, but Harding wasn't convinced anymore. "It may not be legal proof, but it tells a compelling story, and if the children support it, the court might too." Leonard knew the walls were closing in. Back downstairs, Jordan looked David in the eye. "You raised us. You sacrificed everything for this family. I remember it all now. And we let you down." David put a hand on his shoulder. "It's not too late. But we have to fight together." For the first time since the will reading, David felt something he thought he'd lost, hope. The next day, David and his children sat together, poring over Maria's journal. There was more than just heartbreak in those pages, there was a blueprint for the truth. A blueprint that Leonard would never expect them to find. "We have to take this to court," Jordan said, determination in his eyes. "We can't just let him get away with this." David hesitated, his hand resting on the journal. "It's not just the money anymore. It's about her legacy. What she stood for. I have to clear her name." Maya, who had been quiet up until now, spoke up. "But what if Leonard has connections? What if the judge sides with him because of who he is?" David's mind raced. Leonard's influence in the community was undeniable. But it didn't matter. This was about more than money, this was about standing up for their family. He couldn't back down now. "I know we're up against a lot," David said, his voice steady, "but we have the truth on our side. That's something money can't buy." With a deep breath, David stood. "Let's get to work. We'll gather evidence, talk to people who knew her, anyone who can back up the story in this journal." They immediately began to make phone calls, reaching out to Maria's friends, old colleagues, and anyone who could offer testimony. The days passed in a blur, and with each call, each new lead, David's resolve grew stronger. Meanwhile, Leonard was already straight-gizing. He had hired the best lawyer in town, someone who knew how to manipulate the system. But David was determined to fight back. The stage was set. The battle was about to begin. And this time, David wasn't going to lose. The day of the hearing had arrived, and the tension was palpable. David stood in front of the courthouse, his heart pounding. He had spent days preparing, gathering evidence, and reaching out to Maria's old friends. The courtroom was filled with the sound of hushed whispers as people took their seats. Leonard sat across the room, exuding confidence. As he conversed with his expensive lawyer, David looked at his children, standing by his side, each with a mix of determination and anxiety in their eyes. They were ready for this, but the stakes had never been higher. Inside the courtroom, David's lawyer presented the journal Maria had left behind. The pages were meticulously read aloud, revealing Maria's deep love for her family and her intention to ensure they were taken care of, even in death. Every word in the journal painted a picture of the life they had shared, the sacrifices Maria had made, and the love she had for her children. It was clear, she had never intended for Leonard to have control of her estate. Leonard's lawyer immediately tried to discredit the journal, claiming it was fabricated. "This document is nothing more than a work of fiction. There's no proof that Maria ever meant for this to be legally binding," the lawyer argued. But David had anticipated this. He presented phone records, emails, and witnesses who could confirm Maria's intentions. The pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. As the hearing progressed, David felt a surge of confidence. The truth was coming out, and with each passing minute, Leonard's grip on the estate was slipping. The courtroom was silent as the judge prepared to deliver the final decision. David's heart raced. Had they done enough to expose the truth? The judge stood, his gavel raised, signaling the end of the proceedings. For a moment, the room was deathly silent. David's heart was in his throat, his mind racing. This was it. The moment that could change everything. The judge cleared his throat. After reviewing all the evidence presented, including the journal and supporting testimonies, it is clear that Maria's final wishes were to be honored. However, he paused, glancing at both parties. David's stomach dropped. However, he thought. What more could there be? The judge continued, it appears there is another clause in Maria's will, one that was not previously disclosed. A clause that changes everything. David's pulse quickened. He had never heard of any such clause. His lawyer's face mirrored his shock. As the judge instructed the lawyers to present the hidden clause, the clause was read aloud, revealing a shocking revelation. Maria had left a portion of her estate to David's children, ensuring their future and education, but there was one caveat: she had also provided for a trust that would only become accessible once the truth about the family dynamics was fully exposed. David's mind raced. Maria had set up this trust to be unlocked only if Leonard's manipulation was revealed. The truth was more important than money. Maria had believed in family above all else. Leonard's face turned pale. He had no idea this clause existed. The realization hit him hard. His attempts to control the family legacy had been in vain. The judge looked at David. It seems this battle has already been won. The will is clear. The estate will go to your family as per Maria's wishes. David's heart swelled with emotion. The victory was within reach. The final chapter of the will reading echoed in the room, leaving everyone stunned and speechless. The words had just been read aloud, and the tension was palpable. Leonard, still reeling from the shocking revelation, looked utterly defeated. His arrogant facade had cracked, exposing the truth of his manipulation. David, on the other hand, was overwhelmed with a sense of relief and gratitude. For years, he had been the one overlooked, dismissed, and belittled. But now, after everything, he was finally being recognized. Maria had seen him, truly seen him, and had made sure that his children and his future would be secure. Even in her absence, the room began to quiet as the attorneys prepared the final documents. Leonard, unable to hide his fury, stood up and stormed out of the room without saying another word. He had lost, and there was no coming back from this. His grip on the estate had slipped, and now he had nothing. David's lawyer turned to him with a smile, offering a congratulatory handshake. You did it, David. This is your legacy now, as Maria intended. David looked around at his children, who had been silently observing the entire process. Their eyes, full of hope and wonder, met his. He knew this moment was not just a victory for him, but for them. They would inherit a future built on love, loyalty, and respect, a future far different from the one Leonard had tried to force upon them. As they left the courtroom, David took a deep breath. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had led him to this moment of redemption. Maria had left more than just money. She had left a blueprint for what family should be: united, strong, and filled with love. With his children by his side, David stepped forward into a new chapter, ready to honor the legacy Maria had built, knowing that her love would always guide him. If you found David's journey inspiring and the twist at the will reading shocking, make sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories about family, redemption, and the power of hidden legacies. Have you ever experienced an unexpected twist in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's talk about it. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter in these powerful, heart-touching stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.